What's going on, guys? Are you trying to out-heal everybody on your Holy Paladin? Let's do it. What's going on, guys? Today we're going to look at the advanced tips for being a Holy Paladin and mixing some healer stuff as well. While we've looked at our basic guide, which you can click here using some quality picture-in-picture action, going on about the gemming and your talent spec for your Holy Paladin, okay? Now, patch 4.3 didn't exactly change that for us. Patch 4.3 definitely brought some big changes for our Holy Paladin, but in essence, your talents are going to remain the same, and your gearing is going to maintain the same. Now, we're going to look at some advanced tips on that, okay, guys? So if you want to learn about that kind of stuff and some basic rotations, check out that guide. I go into a heroic on some very, very little gear, some blues and greens mixed together, and heal a heroic like a total boss without even having to drink. Go and check it out, because remember, guys, it's all about how you play. If you want to throw out those bro fists exactly like a total boss and not get stabbed in the face by your local looking for group heroes, go and exactly watch that guide. So what are we doing today? We're looking at some advanced tips on how to improve your healing overall. Now, in terms of a raid setting, I haven't healed for a very, very long time, especially progression raiding. I haven't healed since vanilla, where I was a priest. Okay, so things have changed a lot since that point. I healed a little bit of TBC as a Holy Paladin. They were fresh to the Horde. I did the old re-roll for my guild and then brought it back into the play, okay? So what I've done is I've spoken to some various healers and spoke to them exactly how they have changed and adapted and how they've modified their class. Okay, so now we're going to look at some maths. A little bit of maths for you. Don't QQ just yet. And we're also going to be talking about some very, very intense tips that are very similar to cast DPS and how you can improve your play. Because what do we need to do as a healer? Well, first of all, point one. Big point one is we need to be able to cast. We need to be free to cast at a moment's notice. Healers have the most difficult job of all compared to everything else that was going on in there. Their difficulty that lies in the solo healing areas, one, they have to watch health bars, okay? And that is an absolute pain in the ass because we need to watch health bars while we're also watching what's going on around us, because we are not immune as healers from going into the fire and from having rockets land on our ass. And also, if we start moving, we're at very high risk of people dying, okay? So a healer has to start moving constantly. We're going to be in serious, serious trouble, guys. We don't want to be moving. We want to plant our feet like a total boss and then be stood there for as much time as humanly possible. We also need to think heavily about where we are stood, and that is the big point one. Positioning. Positioning is the biggest key. Where the hell are you stood in relation to everything that's going on around you? Now, what you'll often find in a raid setting is healers are assigned certain roles. However, things can go wrong. We know this every single time. There can be an unlucky chain of events to another group, in which case we now had to switch our focus. We spoke heavily in our tank guide that if healers aren't busy doing what they're supposed to be doing, because you've either geared slightly incorrectly to too much avoidance, which is fully plausible, then healers can get distracted and move elsewhere, because a healer's job is to keep everybody alive. That is the be-all and end-all of it. People dying, that is generally going to be looked on as the healers. Even if it's a DPS fault, healers take this burden of being raged at by raid leaders if people start dying, okay? And the healers will sometimes say, a lot of healers don't like to speak up in general. Some healers do, but a lot of healers in general don't like to speak up and say, no, he did this wrong, he did that wrong. They will go, yeah, but people still shouldn't be dying. Everything else is fine. Why is that guy dead, okay? And we want to avoid that as much as possible because we don't want to get our rage. Healers are a way of life is what I've found. The people who've been healing since vanilla and still healing to this day absolutely love it and would never change their role. They don't feel comfortable in the other roles. They actually love healing. And then you'll find the other side of the coin is that people who don't like healing will never ever heal. They might try it out once or twice on an alt, but overall they don't like it. And then they say, oh, it's really easy. The worst thing I ever hear about healers, and what annoys the secret healers, the big time healers the most, is, oh, healing's easy. You just got to watch the health bars. Healing is not easy. It is not easy whatsoever. That is an incorrect attitude to take. It really, really is. Healing is just not an easy thing. So when we start a fight, the first thing that needs to be on your mind, guys, is your position. Where are you going to stand? And now this is so massively important. It really is. What environment are you in? If it's something like Madness of Deathwind, you don't have an awful lot of room to manoeuvre. So you need to be very, very clear on what mechanics are going on, where people are going to be travelling. Spine of Deathwing involves cleaves and all sorts of stuff. And you want to make sure that you're not taking unnecessary damage, because that's more healing for you. Holy Paladins, of course, have the glorious satisfaction of being able to heal themselves while they're healing other people. But in general, you want to avoid as much damage as possible without having to move. This is the key thing. It's no good just getting into the fight, trundling in as the tank pulls, and so, right, I'm here now, this is the quickest place I found, I'm staying here. And then you're moving all the time, okay? You've not thought about it beforehand. Before the pull, there's generally a lot of time. Healers should be very much thinking, where the fuck am I going to stand? Where is my place? Now what will generally happen is somebody else will go and stand there near as well. Someone like a caster DPS will mindlessly go and stand there as well, not appreciating the fact that a caster DPS can quite happily DPS on the move. And while healers can sometimes use some spells while they're moving, you've got some spells that increases your speed as a Holy Paladin so you can get into new places faster. It's certainly the case that you don't want to be doing that all the time. You don't want to be doing that all the time, okay? You want to be finding a position that is unique. A position that isn't going to take the least amount of damage. A position that the caster DPS generally won't want to use because they want to DPS from the very start. So you can almost rely on caster DPS to be somewhere near where they want to start at the very beginning of the fight before you even do the pull. Caster DPS wants to be casting as the pull occurs, okay? Caster DPS wants to be firing their big long bolt, let's say a mage. He wants to be firing off that pyroblast the second the tank reaches the target to get his big DPS going, to get his hots rolling, his dots, sorry. He wants to be doing that from the very start. Healers have a little bit of extra leeway on that. Why? Because you can pre-heal. This is something that DPSers can't do. They can't pre-heal. Holy Paladins don't really have this gift, but certainly priests can be bubbling, throwing menus on there, and Resto Druids, of course, are hotting up the tanks before you get in there. As a Holy Paladin, that buys us some time. It buys us just a few seconds to get to where we want to be. Now, being in a correct position provides so many passive advantages that it's going to help you increase your HPS more than just adding another item. If you understand what I'm saying, you might think, oh, I need to increase my healing. Maybe I should just get another intellect gem in there if I can. Or if I got this item, I would increase my healing. Correct positioning is going to increase your throughput so much more. It really is. If you can plant your feet and you're in range of everybody, that's the key part of it, okay? You want a position where you can be stood generally on your own, unless it's a heavy AoE fight. These are things to consider. Is this a heavy AoE damage fight? Then I need to be with everybody else. If I'm with the melee, I need to be stood on the melee. I need to be stood on their nuts. I need to be cramping their style, be right in there and stood with them. Is this not a heavy AoE fight? Am I doing a lot of tank healing and a lot of single target topping off? Is there a few debuffs I need to be aware of? A great example of this is Sinestra. Any of you who haven't done Sinestra has an awful debuff, okay? An awful debuff that's going to start ticking, and this can even involve Twilight Cutters, and then the Twilight Cutters are going to make people run all the way around the room. Now, if people died from Twilight Cutter or died from the debuff, then that debuff was going to jump to someone else very randomly and probably give them, okay? So it was not plausible to let that person die, even though they had to run away from the group. This is all about healer positioning. A great example of healer positioning. A healer should position in such a way that he can generally avoid Twilight Cutter, and he can generally still reach most of the room. Although the raid is very much bunched up at the front of Sinestra, giving her the old 1-2, you want to make sure as a healer, people are going to be running back. You know this before the fight starts, so you need to think very carefully about your position. You also need to be heavily watching what's going on around you, which we're going to talk to in step 2. So what I want you to think about, want you to practice more and more, is not just tunneling your health bars. This is a very, very difficult thing to get out of as a healer, is just watching your health bars. If you're new to healing, you're going to be so focused on those health bars, you're going to make overall mistakes. You're going to be running into heavy, heavy problems with things going on around you. As soon as you're studying fight, you're going to have to move your eyes. Now, moving your eyes is not only an issue in terms of time lost while you move your eyes. Believe me, that is a factor, especially with some debuffs on the floor, which will kill you in 2 ticks. If we looked at Vanilla and the 4 Horsemen, we could die very quickly to the Void Zone, okay? That was a common issue with healers, is if the Void Zone landed under them, 2 ticks to a Void Zone, you were humped into submission. You were absolutely gibbed. So that we could not afford, as healers, to not take our eyes off of what's around us. However, at the same time, we can't take our eyes off where we're going to be. And that's going to take us to step 3 I'll talk to you about later, which is UI, okay? So first and foremost, your position. What does this boss do? Is there a huge amounts of AoE damage? Are people going to have to be running a distance from the pack? Is this a single target healing fight? If so, find a position where you are most likely not to be causing, one, a problem by crowding other people. If there's definitely sort of AoE splash damage, you don't want to be stood near the caster DPS. You don't want to be. If they're going to be single target AoE debuffs landing on the boss, think about Festival, things like that. Large puddles of slime landing right on your boobs. You don't want that. You want to be stood somewhere where you're less likely to get hit by that, And if you do get hit by it, it's literally you that has to move. You're not relying on other people to move. A common mistake with healers is, yo, I'm healing, you need to be moving. If you think about Balrog Heroic, they got the debuff, healers were told not to move. But in general, you had this very difficult issue where, say, it was a healer and a melee DPS linked. That is a long-ass route to take back, and healers often did have to move even a little bit. So you need to be thinking about this beforehand. Where can I stand? If you, again, using the example of Balrog Heroic, you had people clumped up to take soaking crystals. Then there was people with debuffs, which was reduced healing, which was a nightmare. Balrog was essentially a healer fight. You had all this shit going on around you. Healer position was so key. And what you generally found is that the healers started to take a position pretty much next to the melee, because the caster DPS was going to be nice and far back, soaking their crystals at the back. The melee crystals were, of course, in melee range of the boss. There was this nice gap in the middle, and healers found that, yo, if I stand in this little gap in the middle, I'm going to be aces. And Holy Paladins benefited a lot from that. So first rule of all, positioning. Check where you're going to stand. Okay, really, really important. Second point I'm going to talk about is choosing the right spell for the right job. Now, patch 4.3 brought something very, very interesting and also reduced our interest in the class a little bit. From the Holy Paladins I spoke to, they found it an absolute sort of, yes, it's great, but it's also a bit of a take the piss spell, really is. Holy Radiance was changed. Holy Radiance was now spammable. It was a casted spell instead of being automatic. It didn't just fly off, but now it was a casted spell, but it had no cooldown. Now, the two good and the two bad points about it. One, we had a permanent constant AoE heal on standby. We had it ready and raring to go. The other good point is it gave us tons of healing. Holy Radiance initially in patch 4.3 was massively overpowered. The forums are filled with people complaining, yo, Holy Radiance is bullshit. And it was. Even the top Holy Paladins in the world were quite openly saying Holy Radiance is going to be nerfed. And nerfed it has been. However, it's been balanced. You might consider it a nerf, but one, it was overpowered. Now it's at a balanced level. However, now we're going on to the bad points. It is spammable. The problem with Holy Paladins since vanilla is a lack of functional, fun playstyle. Holy Paladins never had a fun playstyle. They added such thing as Beacon of Light, but Beacon of Light was still essentially the same thing. Holy Paladins would cast one efficient heal all the damn time. Spam so much time. You could macro that shit in, and Holy Paladins hated it. They thought it was so boring. It really was so boring. It was so easy to see why Holy Paladins hated this playstyle, okay? They absolutely hated it. So we have this Holy Paladins just tunneling visions in. However, Holy Radiance's good points is that it's incredibly powerful. It's mana efficient. It benefits, the second point of Holy Radiance being so good, is that it benefits so much more from our haste rating. Now, if you've watched the basic guide, you've understood that our second most important stat after getting intellect is haste rating. And the guides will tell you need something like 3,450 haste rating to get your global cooldown down to that 1 second all the time. Unfortunately, that is not within reach. Even with epic Dragon Soul gear, you're not going to reach that without doing serious haste gemming. And haste gemming is not worth it, guys. So what you can take from that is that you can keep building your haste from gear, reforging towards haste, taking away your crit and your mastery. Take away from that, get some haste, get as much haste as you humanly can, but also gemming for intellect all the time. That is still our basis for doing things. So getting back to our Holy Radiance, we now have this spammable, huge AoE heal. In a heavy AoE fight, you're going to find that Holy Radiance is somewhere on the lines of 60% of your healing done. It is that powerful and that efficient. Of course, going back to step one, which was the initial importance of your positioning, if it is a heavy AoE fight, the Holy Radiance affects around us, okay? It affects everything around us. Our positioning, again, is key to making sure we are making full effects of that Holy Radiance. If we've got this huge, powerful AoE heal, we need to make sure we are cramped up with everybody who needs that healing. We need to make sure we've done that. So that's how your positioning comes into the factor again. So Holy Radiance, how do we use it effectively? Lots of things have been discussed about Holy Radiance and how to use it effectively in heavy AoE fights. If we look at something like Spine of Deathwing and Spine of Deathwing Heroic, lots of little AoE damage, and there's some big AoE damage, some big bursts where we need to make sure we've got some cooldowns, our Avenging Wrath and all that kind of good jazz, ready to deal with that. We're going to be spamming sort of Holy Radiance, and then maybe a Divine Light to top someone up who's got a heavy debuff. You've got your Death and Earth debuffs going on. Holy Radiance, Divine Light, but that should give you 3 charges of Holy Power. And then you have a choice to make. Are you still taking heavy AoE damage? Is it worth throwing out your Light of Dawn? Or is it worth using a Word of Glory, resetting your Holy Power back, and then getting back on with more Holy Radiances? Really is important, but it's spammable. It will cost you mana, but with gear these days, mana's starting to go to where Blizzard didn't want mana to be. None factor. Okay, we're bringing lots of restoration shamans now, lots and lots of mana tides. We're bringing loads of them now. Spirit Link is such a powerful totem that people are starting to spam restoration shamans and maybe bring one Holy Paladin. Okay, so you can argue in one respect that Holy Radiance has removed our niche as a Holy Paladin. Yes, we started to have really good AoE healing. If we look at the very beginning of Cataclysm, Holy Paladins were a godsend. They were combining Holy Radiance with Divine Light, with Avenging Wrath and all that good shit, and proccing it off Beacon and all sorts, and we're healing entire raids on their own and putting out something nearly 30k HPS, which at the beginning of Cataclysm was obscene. So they were rebalanced again. So yes, Holy Radiance has been rebalanced. It is spammable, but it's still very, very powerful. Like I say, it benefits so much from haste. And now I want to talk to you about point 3, which is UI. UI is so important to a healer, I cannot express enough, especially a Holy Paladin, okay? Holy Paladins need to be tracking lots of stuff. We also want to be tracking things like boss health, and this can be very difficult. We need to use our focus frames, okay? Very, very important as a healer to use your focus frame, to have a solid setup of what's going on in the raid, to be tracking debuffs, and also tracking what health the boss is. Why do we need to track what health the boss is, you might ask? Because shit happens at certain HPs of the boss. That is just a natural fact. Nearly enough every boss in the world has some shit that happens at a certain HP of the boss. Again, looking at Spine of Deathwing, when that big, bad amalgamation gets down to sort of a few percent and goes nuclear, we need to be ready for that. We need to precast. Okay, precast. We need to be ready for it. If we know that Nuclear Blast is about to go off in a few seconds, we should be casting our Holy Radiance in that few seconds. Nuclear Blast hits the second it hits. The second it hits, because we've been tracking this with our UI, our Holy Radiance goes off and starts healing that raid up, and perhaps we're throwing out that Light of Dawn just to help out those ballers every which way possible. We need to be doing that. We should have an Avenging Wrath ready for it. A lot of people doing Spine of Deathwing Heroic are using a 2-minute timer. 2 minutes between each tendon phase. 2 minutes between each of the big amalgamation deaths. That makes sure we have these cooldowns ready every time. That is why we're doing it. We could use our Avenging Wrath during the tendon phase to do a little bit of extra damage. Our damage as a Holy Paladin is crap. There's no doubt about it, but every little bit helps. That's what you need to be thinking. So UI, how can I recommend to you to get a decent UI and things to do? You can look at my UI I use for healing, and I'll show you that in a raid environment in the background. But what it's all about is making sure that your focus is on your character, and to look at things like the raid is merely a glimpse down into what's going on. Your UI should be something like Grid. Okay, an example is Grid. I use Grid, and Grid is fantastic. Grid is fully modifiable, okay, even with new and extra debuffs, and you can put them onto your Grid however you like. Okay, that's what's the most important about it. You can modify Grid. I mean, sure, the Blizzard raid frames are okay, but they're sort of shit and they're pretty average. If you're just getting used to healing, you're not going to struggle with the Blizzard raid frames. But when you get into advanced healing and you really want to push yourself, you want to be seeing things like who has aggro. Because you'll often find if somebody pulls aggro and that mob is moving towards them, Grid's going to show you who has aggro before the mob touches them. You can get that bop off. That hand of protection can be there so fast before they take any damage. Or you can precast a heal. You can do all that good stuff. If you want to track a debuff that's got a countdown, you can add a timer to it, okay? You can do all that kind of good shit in Grid, and that's going to help you out so much. But more importantly is the position of Grid. You want something, I'm using Grid as an example, you can use other mods that are very similar, but you want your Grid to be somewhere central, somewhere near where your character is on the screen. That by that point, by you looking at Grid, you're also seeing your character through your peripheral vision, okay? You're also seeing that. You also want a focus target somewhere in this area. Your central area of your screen should be very dedicated as a healer. So one, where the fuck are you stood? And two, what the hell is going on in the raid? You need to be able to see that. You need to be tracking on your Grid your beacon of light. You need to be tracking every debuff. You need to be adding these timers to Grid yourself. It's very easy to do. Just look at the FAQ of something like Grid or any raid frames that you're using, and it will tell you everything you need to know about how to do that. Don't ask me to guide it through it. It's everywhere on the internet. You can find a YouTube guide on it, no problem at all. Really, really easy for even the most advanced stuff, okay? Go and find it out and check it out, and it's going to help you so much. That's what you need to be doing, okay? So we've got this sort of UI set up. We can track now by using our focus target. Either we can focus the tank, which is a classic thing to do, and using target of target, which is the other add-on that we can get, all built into the game. We can target a target. The tank should be looking at the boss. Very rarely the tank won't be looking at the boss unless he has to tank an ad. But you pick the main tank, you now see the boss health as well. And you can also see what buffs and debuffs are on the tank. If the boss gets some cast that increases his damage, if we look at Balor Heroic again, if he gets his Inferno Blade, we can see that cast coming. We're ready for it. All about being prepared as a healer. This is what the main key is, okay? Step 4, be prepared for all types of shit. Shit can go wrong instantly. Who's going to have to pick up the pieces? You are. As a Holy Paladin, you better be ready with that Guardian Ancient Kings. You better be ready with those Holy Radiances, and you better be ready to pop up a 3-point Light of Dawn very quickly, or a quick Word of Glory, or a Lay on Hands, all that kind of crazy shit. If you know you have to do things like sacrifice certain people immediately, you don't have time generally when someone calls it. Let me tell you from a tank point of view, Paladins, let me tell you exactly what it's about. A tank will think, I've got a cooldown ready for this, I've got a cooldown ready for that, I'm good to go. Then some shit happens. Shit happens. There's no such thing in World of Warcraft at the moment as RNG, generally, okay? If you wipe and you go, oh, this was RNG, no, look back properly, use some common sense. What led to this? We should have had, if someone dies, we should have had a combat res ready. Why were them combat reses used earlier? Was it some stupid shit? Think about it. Sometimes crap happens. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that sometimes shit happens, someone gets gibbed, it was pretty much unavoidable. That shit will happen. However, a lot of people who say, oh, there's nothing I could do about that, that is bullshit. Absolute bullshit. They should have been popping Hellstones, defensive cooldowns. They shouldn't have been there in the first place, okay? Getting back to this positioning idea, it's not just healers, it's everybody else as well. Their position was wrong, they should have been ready for it. And even if you get the worst of the worst luck of an encounter, there should be something ready. If you look at the robots in Blackwing Descent, the Robot Council on Heroic Mode could throw out Shadow Novas and Flame Jets and all that shit at once, okay? No problem. All has a counter. You might say, this is the worst, man, this is so much damage. You mix in an Aura Mastery in there, blocking that Shadow and that fire damage. You then mix in like a Spirit Link or a Power Word Barrier. It's no problem at all. And you'll have it back up for the next time, okay? The shit is all counterable. There's no such thing. You could have the guy with the Shadow Nova run out while he AoEs, life grip that fucker back in, and then you're good to go. Do you understand what I'm saying? Everything is counterable. So when you talk about RNG deaths, I want you to rethink the situation more linearly. Take yourself out of it. While someone's raging at you on Ventrilo or Mumble or TeamSpeak or any of that kind of shit, think about it. Could you use sacrifice quickly enough? Getting back to that sacrifice, macros, so important as a healer. If you know you've got to sacrifice one of the tanks during this fight, you need it macroed. Okay? Very important. Get it macroed. Get it macroed so you can just say, I need a sacrifice. The tank will be sat there, like I said, with his cooldowns. Some shit happens. Your tank's going to say, sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. As soon as you hear that, macro, done. You've keybind your macro, done. Targeting him, or you just said, cast Hand of Sacrifice on that guy. It's done without a second. You can carry on doing what you're doing. That's what's most important. Distracting yourself, thinking, shit, I need to click, I need to select him, and then click him again. Oh, now I need to cast Sacrifice. Shit could be dead by then. You understand what I'm saying? You need to be fast. You need to be ready and on the ball. I knew healers going back to Sartharian Heroic Mode 10-man, one of the hardest fights in early Wrath of the Lich King. One of the hardest fights, and I need to rely on things like Guardian Spirit from Priest while tanking that. But I only had a couple of seconds to call it because a Flame Breath was coming from Sartharian. I had 3 debuffs, including the Vesperon debuff. You get the Shadow Flame coming. It was going to kill me. I needed Guardian Spirit within 2 seconds. And often I would find if I played with one priest, I would get it every time. And that priest had Guardian Spirit macro to me every time. Or if I played with another priest, I would never get it and we would wipe. A simple macro can save you so much time because you know beforehand if you're going to have to do this, okay? You know beforehand. If your sacrifice could be on a random target, a random debuff, then fair enough, there's not much you can do about that except to be speedy on those fingers and being absolutely ball and micro. That's what that's all about, okay? But get your macros set up as a healer, especially when you know what's going to happen. If you definitely need to hand of protection to somebody, get a macro set up for it. Get a macro between the two of you so they don't have to say it. If there's loads of shit going on a Mumble, as a tank, I have a ton of times made macros which whispered somebody, I need hand of protection. I need this. I need it now. But there's loads of people talking on Mumble or Ventrilo or TeamSpeak. Get it set up between you. All talking beforehand. Healers are all about preparation. Holy Paladins are all about preparation. When are you going to need your Avenging Wrath? When are you going to be able to Divine Plea? Think about this stuff, guys. It's so easy. The spells are all there for you. If this is the advanced tips guide, you should be ready and raring to go. You should have this sort of shit all keybinded, and you're able to pick which spell for the right job. We covered that in the basic guide. Which spell for which moment. This is how you look after your mana as a paladin. If you're in the advanced sort of level, you should be ready for that. You know when to cast your Divine Light, you know when to cast your Holy Light, you know when to cast your Flash Fly, you know when to cast off your Divine Plea. But all this stuff is now moving to a more advanced level. Now you're thinking about, yeah, I can heal. I'm cool with healing. Healing's a piece of piss. Now, I want to take it up to the next level. I'm now thinking about my positioning. I'm more concerned with my UI and how efficient it is at letting me see everything that's going on around me and spotting visual effects. You might be able to spot the fire under your friend before he does. And you're either saying something on mumble or you're pre-casting a heal. You can see that it's been a bit slow. You're already casting that heal because you know it's going to kill him otherwise, okay? And then people are really going to start to pick you up as one of the top healers in the game. That's how you move on to the next level. It's not about just, oh, we healed this one and everything was fine. It's about doing that little bit extra, okay? It's about taking that shit up and making it better. That's what I recommend to you guys. Gearing is all the same. Get as much intellect as possible, then buff up your haste. Talent spec is in the previous guide. Other than that, remember, positioning all the time. Holy Radiance usage in patch 4.3 and making sure you're maximising the benefit of your holy power. Also look at your UI and then consider when are you going to use your cooldowns. Think about how long the fight is, how long have you got, when do you need this burst healing, tracking what's going on around you, be a grid, be a target of target, be a focus target, all that stuff. As a healer you can have focuses on loads of things, okay? You can have a focus on a tank or a DPS, tracking the boss HP with his target of target. You can have your tank as your main target, tracking him, and using mouse over macros, and all that stuff that's very easy to find now and you should be able to play with to track everything else around you, and all you need was a sword, okay? I hope that helps you out with some advanced playstyles for your Holy Paladin, and I hope that takes you to the next level. Leave some comments of any of the shit that you've put into trial and looking for raid, or even normal raids or heroic raids, and let me know how you think about it, okay guys? This is Preach, take it easy until next time.